Welcome to Sanctuary Park Cemetery in Etobicoke, Ontario, ancestral territory of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Wendat, Ojibwe, and Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. Today, we will be visiting Victoria Cross recipient Frederick Topham, a character from the Anne Frank diary, Victor Krugler. Then, we'll cross the street over to Riverside Cemetery, where we will visit the former Mayor of Toronto, Rob Ford. Let's go. Immediately walking through the front gate, we find a plaque dedicated to Corporal Frederick Topham, VC, and exactly where to find him. And here we are at Section A, Plot 147C, where we find Victoria Cross recipient Corporal Frederick George Topham. Born and raised here in Toronto, Topham enlisted in the Second World War in 1942 at the age of 25. Initially serving with the local infantry regiment, the 48th Highlanders of Canada, with the emergence of airborne operations, Topham was compelled to volunteer as a paratrooper and joined the 1st Canadian Parachute Battalion in 1943. Trained as a medical orderly, Topham's first action in the Second World War was Operation Tonga, the airborne operation ahead of the Normandy invasion. And Topham was dropped into France on June 5th, 1944, the day before D-Day. After months of heavy fighting, Topham and his battalion had pushed the Germans back to the Rhine River, and as the Allies continued the offensive across the river into Germany, Topham was airdropped on the eastern bank, where his Victoria Cross action took place. To summarize his VC citation, Topham had been shot in the face but continued his duties as a medic before receiving aid himself. Then, he managed to bring 3 comrades into safety while under heavy fire. Topham survived the war and returned to Toronto until he passed away in 1974 at the age of 56. Topham's Victoria Cross is on display at the Canadian War Museum in Ottawa, Ontario. I want to acknowledge that 2 Americans received the Medal of Honor on the same day and same operation as Topham, Stuart Stryker and George Peters, but sadly they did not live to see the end of the war, and their Medal of Honor was awarded posthumously. Next up is Victor Krugler, who was a member of the group who helped hide Otto Frank and his family, which included his daughter, Anne Frank. Krugler, known as Mr. Krugler in the Diary of Anne Frank, was the one that came up with the idea of the revolving bookcase to help conceal the secret annex. Unfortunately, Krugler was arrested when the Franks were discovered and was sent to a prison camp, but he managed to escape. After the war, Krugler's wife Laura sadly passed away in 1953. He would marry Lucy 3 years later, and with his brother, sister, and mother-in-law living in Toronto, the couple decided to move here where they would spend the rest of their lives. Krugler was declared righteous among the nations in 1973 and passed away in 1981 at the age of 81. All right, let's cross the street to Riverside Cemetery. Very rarely does Canadian politics ever make American news, especially municipal politics. But that all changed in 2013 when late-night television from Jay Leno to Jimmy Kimmel, Jon Stewart, and even SNL all talked about Toronto Mayor Rob Ford. And here he is, the Mayor of Toronto from 2010 to 2014, Rob Ford. Ford comes from a rich political lineage. His father, Doug, was a member of provincial parliament for this area from 1995 to 1999. His older brother, Doug Jr., is also involved in politics and served on city council while Rob was mayor, and at the time of recording, the current premier of Ontario. Prior to becoming mayor, Ford served this area as a city councillor for 3 terms from 2000 to 2010 with resounding support. Support which won him the 2010 mayoral election. Ford was a high school football coach and famous for returning every single phone call that went to his office. But unfortunately, he is most remembered for his very public incidents with alcoholism and substance abuse, particularly to admitting to smoking crack cocaine while in office.
You asked me a couple questions, and what were those questions?
Do you smoke crack cocaine?
Exactly. Yes, I have smoked crack cocaine.
When,
But
sir?
no, do I? Am I an addict? No.
When have you
Have I
smoked
tried
crack
it? Probably in one of my drunken stupors, probably approximately about a year ago. I answered your question.
To illustrate how international this story became, I was in a hotel room in Lisbon, Portugal, watching the BBC when I first learned about the video. And it was this story that caught the attention of the late-night American comedy circuit, during which Ford would appear live in studio on Jimmy Kimmel Live. Despite the constant negative attention, Ford ran for re-election in 2014 and was polling second. But it was during this campaign he received tragic news. He had cancer. Ford would drop out of the mayoral race, and his brother Doug would replace him as candidate. Ford would instead run for his old city council seat and win, but he would not sit. After intense treatment, Ford sadly passed away on March 22nd, 2016, leaving behind 2 young children. Supporters and critics alike arrived in droves to pay their final respects to Ford at City Hall before he was laid to rest here by his father. Ford was 46 years old at the time of his passing. Just recently, a football stadium in Centennial Park was renamed in Ford's honor. In attendance was the current mayor of Toronto, Olivia Chow, his brother, Doug, the Premier of Ontario, and his daughter, Stephanie, who remarked that her father's first love was Etobicoke, and his second was football. Victoria Cross recipient, Frederick Topham, the man who helped hide Anne Frank, Victor Krugler, and the former mayor of Toronto, Rob Ford, all here at Sanctuary Park and Riverside Cemetery. Thanks for watching. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, I'd appreciate if you like and subscribe. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next one.